I've been looking at alcohol stoves the last couple of weeks, and my motivation was on my last camping trip. The weather was pretty cold. It was around freezing, below freezing at night, and I made the mistake of leaving my gas canister out overnight. I should have kept it in my sleeping bag to keep it warm, but I forgot. So the next morning I went out to light the trusty BRS 3000. It lit, burned for about 20 seconds, and then pretty much went out because the gas was too cold to vaporize. So it got me to thinking that maybe I should be looking at alcohol stoves again for cold weather. I've used alcohol stoves in the past, and they certainly work okay. I found them a little bit fiddly to use sometimes. And so I pulled out my old ones. This is the classic cat can stove, the penny stove. I personally find that one a little bit fiddly. This is a new one that I made. This is called the CHS stove, or the capillary hoop stove. Very, very clever design by a Japanese fellow. And this one works very well. It burns extremely hot, but it's perhaps not so fuel efficient. And this is my attempt to make a Starlight type stove in a pellet can, just some carbon felt with a little flame reducing ring. And you can close that back up and save your fuel. And that one works fairly well. And I made the Fancy Feast stove. This is an ultralight version of it with aluminum inner, carbon felt, and the aluminum, I guess that's a tuna can or cat food can, I guess, on the outside. And that weighs, I think it was 18 grams, super light. And this one is what I call the mini Starlight. This is made from an aluminum, one of those little display cases or watch case, whatever. It had a glass lid in here. I just knocked that out and put some carbon felt on the inside, and there's a stainless steel screen in the top here. I still need to seal this thing up because it leaks a little bit out the side, but that little stove holds about half an ounce of fuel max, but I find it's quite efficient, and it's good enough for heating up this, which is my small titanium mug. This is a 450 ml titanium mug. And if you're just making coffee or you're rehydrating small meals, this pot is actually big enough. So I was researching alcohol stoves. I came across this thing called a Caldera Cone, or it's also known as a conical windscreen, to improve the efficiency of your alcohol stove. And this is my first prototype. I made it to fit the little 450 ml mug. And you basically put your stove in the bottom here, like so, light it up, put the cone over, gives you a windscreen and a pot support, and that's pretty solid, that one. It's made of a piece of aluminum flashing. And I did a lot of testing with this and found it absolutely improves the efficiency of the stove. Now that cone is it's a little bit tricky to design. There's various ways of doing this, but I was looking on zenstoves.net, and I found they have a really nifty design tool on that website for designing this cone and creating a template. So that's the template I used for this cone, and you basically put in the parameters, which would be the height of the pot, the height you want the flame away from the stove, and the height of the stove, and how many holes you want in it, and it basically creates this really nice template. So I taped that to a piece of aluminum flashing, cut it out, punched out the holes, and that was my prototype cone. The problem with this one is it's a little bit heavy, made out of aluminum flashing, and obviously it's a very bulky thing to try and pack. You can roll that up, but it really doesn't break down very well. Now, one of the features of that design tool is it will also create a two-part cone that you can take apart, and goes together with this little tab and slot mechanism here, and that is actually small enough that will go inside the pot when you roll it up. So I wanted to make the cone a little bit lighter as well, so I found this aluminum tray at the dollar store. It cost me $1.25, and this is actually 11 thou aluminum. And unfortunately it's not big enough to make the bottom piece in one go, so I used a three-part template. So this is the top piece, these are the two halves of the bottom, and I added a ½ an inch on each side of the bottom, and then I folded it together to create a little seams. To assemble the cone, basically just work around it, fitting the tabs and slots together. It's a little bit fiddly, but not too bad. And then there's this little tab arrangement. Just line the tabs, put it together. There's your cone. Slide your pod in. That's quite solid. So in my testing, if I have 300 mils of water in the mug and 12 mils of fuel in the stove, I get a boil in about 8.5 minutes. The stove goes for around 11 minutes, so that's pretty good fuel efficiency. So the cone is in the mug. I can put in a folding spork. This is a Mio bottle, holds about 2 ounces of fuel. There's no fuel in here at the moment. And my mini Starlight stove, all go in there. On goes the lid. So the weight of that cook kit in the stuff sack, 6.2 ounces, 176 grams. And that will certainly do you for a day hike to make coffee or tea or whatever. And it should give you about 4 boils with 2 ounces of fuel. If you're lucky, maybe 5. So that's actually enough cooking to do you for an overnight camping trip as well. So I think that's it's a pretty nice, efficient, compact, very, very light setup.